across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio. Know your times.
Hello, good morning. It's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 7th of April. You're listening to Times Radio with Charlotte Ivers in for Callum MacDonald. Welcome to Early Breakfast. Coming up,
Times Radio Early Breakfast.
19 minutes past 5 on Times Radio. Charlotte Ivers here. Having a bit of a nightmare, I have to say. We've had technical problems all morning and I may have just contributed to them more by spilling my coffee all over the desk. So hopefully we can be saved by the presence of Josh Rom, freelance broadcaster, who joins me now to review the papers if I haven't managed to break all the computers and we can't speak to him. Josh, are you there?
I am indeed here, Charlotte. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with this big story then, the story on the front page of the Times this morning. A trial of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in British children has been paused while regulators investigate possible links to rare blood clots in adults. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you pretty much summed it up with the headline there. What I will say is Professor Andrew Pollard from the University of Oxford has said that there were actually no safety concerns with the trial itself, but this was taken out of an abundance of caution and scientists were waiting for further information around the 300 volunteers that have been signed up to the trial. Now, the PM, Boris Johnson, has said that people should still get their jabs when invited. And it's so far been said that the benefits of the jab currently outweigh the risks of the jab, basically. And that's coming directly from the MHRA, the obviously the regulatory body, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. And I think it shows because obviously more than 30 million people in the UK have had their first dose of the vaccine. A total of over 5 million have received a second dose of the vaccine. And although this trial has been paused, it is purely out of safety and there haven't been any direct concerns.
Absolutely. And there were some concerns, weren't there, about the European Medicines Agency potentially finding a link between the vaccine and the clots. But the regulator, they seem to have distanced themselves from those claims now.
Yes, absolutely. And especially when it comes to this trial, they are saying we are awaiting information on its review of rare cases that have been reported in adults. But I think that's the thing. It's one of those things where I think it's the PM and the MHRA are very keen to say, listen, the risks, the benefits outweigh the risks by a large amount. And they're still saying to people, get your jabs when invited. So the government is very clear in that messaging coming on through. And as we've said, the trial has been paused purely as a precautionary measure, even though there have been no serious concerns with it itself.
And as well, looking at the front page, the Metro, Easyjet CEO criticises testing requirements in Britain's travel restart plan. This is something we looked at on the show yesterday as well. For a bit of context, let's have a listen to Baroness McGregor-Smith. She spoke to me yesterday about the concerns that the airline industry has at the moment.
I think if you take a look at what's happened since the start of the pandemic, the aviation industry was the first hit. We'll be the ones who recover, I guess, the latest. It's, so far, if you take a look at the financial results of, say, the UK airports alone, Heathrow's lost over £2 billion last year, Gatwick £500 million. There's 1 million jobs in this industry, and we are really keen to make sure that the industry can restart, but we cannot afford the significant level of losses that are continuing.
So, Josh, there's a lot of speculation that the testing requirements might be particularly burdensome for the airline industry. And the Easyjet CEO is now talking about that as well. Tell us what he's been saying.
Yeah, so Easyjet CEO Johan Lundgren has said that pre-departure and arrival PCR tests, if they are required for travellers arriving in the UK, he says that the expense would be way over and above what the cost of an average Easyjet fare would be. But I think when it comes to this story, I am myself the son of a travel agent, and it's not just the airline industry. I've seen the massive impact that coronavirus has had on the travel industry as a whole. And I think it's also fair to say that we are not the only country that's now introducing testing requirements. I know a lot of countries, specifically with traveling around Christmas time, I know some countries have said we're not going to accept any rapid sort of testing. We need the PCR test. So it also depends also on the destination of flights. And I think obviously when it came to this particular statement, he was talking in the concept of EasyJet. Now, EasyJet is a low budget airline, but I don't think he's really taking into account the effect that this has on either luxury travel or even the corporate travel.
Indeed so. And Boris Johnson yesterday did seem to give a bit of an indication that we might see cheaper tests brought in, the potential for lateral flow tests. They are a lot cheaper. That would make a big difference to the airlines, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think these cheaper tests and these rapid tests as well, that will enable the airlines to test people at the airports. And I think it will limit the impact of coronavirus more on travel potentially. And it's a sign of if they introduce that sort of testing, then obviously more people will be able to travel in a shorter space of time. And it would seem safer to do so. But as I said before, it does depend on what other countries have as their requirements. And I think we in the UK have been quite late in the game when it comes to introducing testing and introducing all of these travel requirements. And even though the traffic light system, I think, will help in that, it also, in order for the travel industry to succeed and to properly open up, I think this has to be a worldwide effort.
Let's have a look at some of those other stories around this morning as well. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle secure their first Netflix show about the Invictus Games. Let's start by talking about the contents of that show then. What do we know?
So this is front page of the Mail. Of course, the Mail. We're going to include this on the front page. So Netflix have announced that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's first TV series, following their multi-million-pound deal, will be a documentary series. It's going to be called Heart of Invictus, and it's going to follow competitors around the world training for the games, as well as some of the organisers. Obviously, the games were expected to take place in 2020, but of course, due to the pandemic, were delayed. Harry and Meghan's Archwell Productions have got a director and a producer on board, and it's been reported that the Duke of Sussex will indeed appear on camera and will also be an executive producer. So this isn't quite the fly on the wall reality series that's previously been reported. I think this is going to be a documentary series that I think people are going to welcome, because it does show that kind of charity effort. Obviously the Invictus Games is a cause that is very important to Prince Harry and has been, and I think people will welcome this. And it's not this kind of glossy, intimate reality TV series that I think people were expecting. And it does kind of give a preview of kind of Archewell's vision of wanting to create this content to promote charity organisations.
And talk us through this Netflix deal, because this is one of many big deals the Sussexes have done recently, isn't it?
Yeah, so they also obviously have a deal with Spotify, and it's been revealed that Harry has joined various Silicon Valley organizations in various roles. I think the interesting thing, obviously, in the interview with Oprah Winfrey was how Prince Harry said how he didn't previously think of streaming. But I think I can't imagine that to actually be the case, because all of these sorts of deals, especially when you're involving an organization like Invictus, and you have to go behind the scenes and you have to liaise with all of these people, from the organizers to the trainers to the athletes. There's a lot of work in place, and I cannot see how this was some sort of spontaneous or short-term decision. This obviously, I think, would have had to have been a series that would have to have been in discussion for a long time.
And more broadly then, Netflix seems to be splashing the cash an awful lot at the moment. Is this some part of some broader strategy, do you think? What are they trying to achieve here with all these big names they keep signing?
Well, it's well known that Netflix have been investing a lot of their money into their film department recently. Obviously, they were very well known for their hit series such as Sex Education and The Crown. But I know they've been investing very heavily in terms of their film roster. And they've had a couple of big Oscar hits such as Roma and The Irishman, which was directed by Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. So I think what they are trying to do, I think Netflix's strategy is basically to almost permeate all different markets, from documentary series to hit TV shows to dramas to films. I think they want to establish themselves as a firm name in pop culture, to also show that they also are a streaming giant, basically appealing to absolutely anybody and everyone, and that is reflected in the wide variety of programming in which they are making and also buying. Because obviously this year, due to the pandemic, there have been film studios that haven't been able to release their films. And in the case of, I believe, Paramount with Trial of the Chicago 7, Netflix did pay Paramount a very large amount of money in order to acquire the distribution rights. So during the pandemic, Netflix have really shown that they are an alternative to cinemas in these extenuating circumstances, whilst also promoting their own interests as another home for film and TV content.
And one last story before I let you go. Rebecca Ferguson has demanded a parliamentary inquiry and an overhaul of the music industry as Jed would call out the business and Simon Cowell in Twitter tirade. Let's start with Rebecca Ferguson. Talk us through what she's been saying.
Yeah, so she basically took to Twitter in a lengthy tirade calling out problems within the music industry, but she also released a lengthy statement. And in the statement, she said that she's due to meet with the Secretary of Culture, Media and Sport, of course, Oliver Dowden, early next month to debate musicians' welfare and treatment. Now, it's well known that the music industry is currently very much in the front of the mind of the Common Select Committee about the economics of music streaming. However, Rebecca Ferguson wants the Select Committee to extend their questioning beyond streaming and to also include artist welfare to also come under the microscope. She didn't just call out the music industry as well. It's very well known from what she says that she suffered bullying and harassment, and it's not what you see. She says that she's complained to Ofcom, and also she's reached out to a major UK broadcaster to ask for an investigation and maybe an inquiry into the way they recruit artists and treatment of artists on the programme. But what she's also calling for, she's calling for regulation within the industry. So she wants music managers, agents and other executives to have sort of a licensed system similar to what they have in the sport industry, where they should also kind of face a tribunal if they mistreat an artist or employee. And she's basically asking for people to be held accountable to an official independent governing body of the music industry. And I think this comes after as you mentioned, Jedward, there, they basically slam music mogul Simon Cowell, calling him nothing but a bad facelift in a Twitter tirade. They actually name-checked Little Mix and Harry Styles and said that music executives have been controlling them, making all of these artists sign NDAs, so they're effectively silenced, non-disclosure agreements, controlling their image, even controlling parts of their own personal lives. It's well known that when Jessie Nelson, she left Little Mix because she couldn't face up to the challenges of being in the band. It had a really bad effect on her mental health. And it's very well known that I think obviously all eyes have been on the film industry with the likes of Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey, but the music industry hasn't really had a Me Too kind of moment as of yet. So I think the fact that more stars are speaking out and wanting this inquiry, I think just shows that obviously there is something going on in the music industry. It's kind of been a well-known secret, but obviously with the presence of NDAs, obviously people haven't been comfortable to speak out for fear of breaking it and wanting to get sued. So I think, you know, if Rebecca Ferguson is demanding action from Parliamentary Select Committee committees, and obviously she's meeting up with the Culture Secretary. I think this could potentially be the start of something here.
Let's hope so. Josh, thank you so much for speaking to me this morning. That was Joshua Rom, who is a freelance broadcaster. Time is 5:33. Let's get a quick news headlines update.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.